Over at MSLSD, MSLSD is the propaganda cable network for Hamas. Let me repeat that. MSLSD is the propaganda cable network for Hamas. That doesn't mean every host is, but too many of them are. There's an MSLSD host by the name of Joy Reid. She's an absolute, complete, pathetic moron. Absolute moron. You hear me, Joy? She's questioning Mark Regev, Netanyahu's spokesperson, on MSLSD today. Now, nobody saw this. Nobody watches that pathetic little carbon footprint. But I want to point it out. Cut 4, go.
I want to start by talking about those military tactics that are being employed by the Israeli Defense Forces in Gaza, including airstrikes on hospitals, on schools, even a soccer stadium. How do you respond to the UN High Commissioner's concerns over possible war crimes and the just basic criticism that bombing and shelling hospitals and private homes and even a beach are completely inappropriate?
Let's stop right there. Let's stop right there. I would ask the corporatists who run MSLSD, do you really need to load up your hosts with Hamas propagandists? Can't you have a little balance on your wonderful little network, NBC? Yeah, what is it with the Jews just bombing hospitals, and soccer fields and homes and schools? Why do the Jews target these places? I mean, why do they just attack these places and go after kids and old women and all the rest of it? Because we know this is what the Jews do. This is what they did in 1947, 48. This is what they did in 67. This is what they did. All their wars where they're defending themselves and so forth. And of course we know going all the way back to the Holocaust, this is what the Jews did. Huh? What? You have to be a complete Hamas propagandist to be spewing this kind of BS. And that's exactly what you are, Joy Reid. Go ahead.
Tactics of war.
Well, we don't want to see any civilians caught up in the conflict. We don't want to see a single civilian casualty, not one. Our challenge is that our enemy is ruthless, and our enemy is firing out of schools and hospitals and urban neighborhoods, firing their rockets at our people, trying to kill them.
Do you understand that, Joy? If that is your name. Do you understand that, Joy? Do you understand that these are the tactics of the terrorists with the Nazi pedigree? Do you get it? No, you don't, because you work for MSLSD, which is the cable network for Hamas. Cut 5, go.
That if you're asking people to leave homes that are going to be demolished or bombed, who is then responsible for now?
Stop. Hey, lady, they're asking people to leave homes that are going to be bombed because Hamas leaders, Hamas activists, Hamas fighters are in these buildings. And I would say this to you, Joy, if that is your name, as we talked about yesterday with the great Andy McCarthy's piece at PJ Media. Who voted for Hamas in 2006? As McCarthy points out, Hamas represents the desires of the people in the Gaza Strip, or they wouldn't have voted for them. They weren't confused about what Hamas is and what Hamas believes in. Go ahead.
100,000 people who are now homeless. They cannot go back to their homes even after this operation is over. Who is responsible for the...
Who's feeding you your talking points, moron? Who's feeding you your talking points? And before you claim that I'm some kind of racist, Joy, maybe I should claim that you're some kind of bigot, Joy, because these questions could have been written for you by Hamas, which is why I am now characterizing MSLSD as the Hamas mouthpiece in the United States of America. Go.
Israel is the occupying authority. Is Israel now responsible for those essentially homeless and displaced people?
Listen, if you'll allow me, Joy, I want to take issue with one important word you said. You said Israel is the occupying authority. You're forgetting Israel pulled out of the Gaza Strip. We took down all the settlements, and the settlers who didn't want to leave, we forced them to leave. We pulled back to the 1967 international frontier. There is no Israeli occupation of the Gaza Strip. We haven't been there for some 8 years. Now, why is there hostile rocket fire today from Gaza into Israel? There's not a question of occupation of Gaza. No one claims that Israel is occupying Gaza. The reason for the violence is this Islamic extremism that Hamas represents. You know, when we pulled out of Gaza, everyone supported that. The international community embraced the fact that Israel pulled out of Gaza. Everyone welcomed that. They thought it would give peace a chance, and there was hope that Gaza could become and develop. There was money for investment, for schools, for industry. Gaza was supposed to become this Mediterranean Singapore, and we'd signed an agreement to allow access and trade and commerce and people to go back and forth.
Mr. Reagan, I'm sorry. First of all, you're filibustering, and second of all,
Hamas,
sir, I will point out, and we do have to wrap
Hamas
here.
took over.
We need to point out here, sir, that Israel does control the coastline.
Stop. Let me tell you what's going on here with this moron, Joy Reid. Somebody's whispering in her ear responses to this guy. What does she mean, filibuster? He said he wanted to explain, and he explained. Filibuster. She's going through her talking points. He just told you, moron, that Gaza isn't quote-unquote occupied. The Israelis withdrew. The Israeli military presence withdrew. I remember seeing this on television, don't you, Mr. Producer? Where settlers and so forth, Jews in the Gaza Strip, are being forcibly removed by the Israeli military. And, of course, they burn the synagogues, they burn the buildings down, and so forth and so on. That is the Palestinians. Don't filibuster now. You know, don't tell us, don't correct me. You see, ladies and gentlemen, the theory was that this area would become like Hong Kong or like Singapore or what have you. Open trade, open commerce. This is what the international community said. Oh, yes. But they forgot something rather important. Or did they? Where does the PLO come from? Who started it? What about the Muslim Brotherhood? These organizations and those who populate them, these organizations and those who vote them into power, have no interest in freedom, in private property rights, in a civil society. Quite the opposite. Just remember the heritage. It's the Third Reich. Joy Reid, you nitwit. Go ahead.
Space, the egress and ingress into Gaza. Gaza is not Singapore, but I do appreciate you coming on.
But
sir,
only, why though? Joy, be fair, why? When we left, we didn't have those restrictions. We only imposed restrictions because of the violence, because of Hamas, because of the rockets. You can't put the cart before the horse. The restrictions were a reaction to violence. Had there been no violence, you would have had open borders. You would have had trade. You would have had cooperation.
You know, it's really sad, isn't it? That you actually have advocates on MSLSD for a terrorist organization. And this isn't unique to MSLSD. MSLSD is the propaganda wing of the totalitarian left. MSLSD is the propaganda wing of the totalitarian left. And the totalitarian left in this country embraces these movements, embraces these organizations, wittingly, unwittingly, directly, indirectly. This Joy Reid, sitting there reading talking points, she wasn't even listening to what this fella had to say. Somebody was whispering in her ear, trying to make her say something that wouldn't make her look like an ass, but an ass she is, and an ass she will forever be. Such is the nature of videotape. Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. And this is why I don't give a damn about Comedy Central and John Leibowitz Stewart. But this is why I sought to address his pathetic, ignorant rant with the clapping seals in his studio audience as soon as that occurred. Because he is a self-hater, and he's a moron. His knowledge is superficial. He doesn't even realize how stupid his comments were in his jokes. Oh, you know, the Israelis, they have this app. They know how many missiles are coming in, and how do they warn Hamas? Oh, with little bombs. Damn fool. Who's warning everybody? The Israelis are warning their own people with the apps, and they're warning the Hamas 7th century throwbacks with percussion bombs before they hit these buildings and so forth to the extent that they can. Hamas isn't warning anybody about anything. They're firing rockets into population centers, and they're setting up their own children and women to be killed. Joy Reid, don't you know that, Joy? Oh, you don't know that? Now, speaking to people of Jewish faith, I'm of the Jewish faith. So how do people of the Jewish faith work at MSLSD, given what goes on there now? Given that MSLSD has been a propagandist wing for Hamas and the Israel haters. That's very simple, ladies and gentlemen. I've said it 100 times, I've said it 1,000 times. Liberals, whether they're Catholics, whether they're Jewish, whatever they are, put their liberalism first and their religion second. They put their liberalism first and their country second. They put their liberalism first and their logic second because they're committed to an ideology, not to their country, not to their faith, not to rationality.